Technically, what the mothers are doing is not squatting because they have housing elsewhere, and they're occupying what they've called a social centre on a 12-hour rota. So there's not anybody living at that social centre at the moment.
So they can get away with this?
It's not breaking any laws, and I think what's important about this is that it's highlighting the scandal of empty properties around London, and it's also highlighting the scandal of the strategies of displacement that borough councils like Newham are undergoing at the moment, where they are willfully, indirectly failing to build appropriate levels of affordable housing, and they're also directly trying to displace working class, ordinary families through campaigns like this eviction.
So what do you make of this, Saul Henry?
Well, it does highlight something we've talked on the programme about many times before, haven't we? This idea that there is an insatiable demand, it would appear, for housing in the capital. Just this week we've seen residential property in fashionable Mayfair selling for £5,000 per square foot. It is quite extraordinary, but it's always been like this. We have, since Roman times, had to try and fit in all shapes and sizes into a growing capital. 6.2, 6.3 million people jostle for space in London at the moment, and as a result of that there are inevitably pressures on where people can live. What this protest is very much bringing to the fore at a time as we head towards a general election is the fact that clearly there is this question of whether there is a degree of social engineering going on. But in order for local authorities, on behalf of ratepayers, to develop these sites, to maximise the sites both for not only for just accommodation but also financially, then they have to clear these sites in order for that progress to be made.
Okay, you say this is an ongoing issue in terms of property and prices rising, but you work in property and you work for estate agents, and it is their job to essentially to create this situation where house prices are high and potentially unaffordable.
Well, I'm always cautious, as you know, to disagree with you, but I think we'll find that estate agents are reflecting what the market says is the rent or price of a property. And whilst it is far from perfect, we know that the capitalist system of people swapping properties in exchange for cash is one of the least painful, but not totally painless, ways of doing that. It's not a perfect system, but we have as a society got to try and grasp, as Tracy knows well, the fact that we have got to try and squeeze in as many people as who would like to be here without resorting to that ghastly mental picture of training people up and down the country away from where they were born and brought up.
I mean, is this a fair point? Do these women, do these mums have to just accept the fact that, look, this is just the way it is, that they are going to have to find alternative accommodation in London now?
Well, what happened a year ago when these mothers were served with their eviction notices is that they were told they'd have to move to cheaper areas.
Okay, tell me that. What exactly happened there? They were served with eviction notices. Why is that?
They were served eviction notices and they were told that they would have to move to places as far away as Manchester, Birmingham and Hastings, places where they have absolutely no support networks, no family members, no friends.
When these properties are sitting empty.
These properties are sitting empty. And I think this is part of a broader problem that we have in London, where we treat certain categories of people as economically unviable, politically inconvenient, and as such we see them as a problem to be overcome, to be moved elsewhere. I think this connects up with broader resurgence around the deserving and the undeserving, who deserves to live in London, who doesn't deserve to live in London. And I think the fact that the E15 mothers were so willingly and quickly served with eviction notices shows a much longer history in terms of how single mothers are seen as scroungers, skivers and completely undeserving categories of people.
But there must have been a reason why they were served eviction notices. Councils don't just turn up on someone's door and say you have to leave. What were the reasons for these mothers?
I think it's the eviction notices that they were served with connect up with the broader austerity regime, which has been disproportionately landed on the shoulders of the poor and the marginalised, people who are economically marginalised, people who are in poor paid, precarious work, and people like this group of single mothers who are simply seen as undeserving. I think we need to change the debate around the London housing market. We need to stop talking about how to extract the maximum amount of value from land, and we need to talk instead about how do we build sustainable homes for people in order that they can create sustainable lives for themselves in the capital.
Announcements made on mansion taxes that will raise 1.2 billion, so the Labour Party tells us. Well, since probably 90% of that is going to be raised from the capital, wouldn't it be a good idea if we actually had a debate and a discussion about whether that could be deployed back into the capital to solve some of the problems that Tracy rightly identifies? The thing we have to remember is that as we look around the capital, we have some significant challenges. We have some very, very serious issues. But also, we by and large get around and get along incredibly well. There's a lot to build upon as opposed to flatten and wipe away before we then construct something new. I think we've got a lot to be proud of, but we have an awful lot more to do.